Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane. How are you guys doing today? Again, we're back here, and I've got Lori Lothian with me. How are you doing today, Lori?
I'm pretty good, Shane. Thanks.
Awesome. Let me make sure the title updated because, okay, I just hadn't refreshed the page. It was still saying Jose's birthday on here, and I was like, oh no, did it not switch the title? Okay, so yeah, still happy birthday, Jose. It's your birthday. We're still
the never-ending party.
Right, the never-ending party. So, since you last were on, and you had, have we talked since you went back to the person that saw your rainbow aura? Didn't you go back and see?
I did go back to see her, and then she just said, well, it's not something that she normally sees, but she doesn't know what to make of it. Like, she wasn't making a big deal about it. She's like very low key.
Oh, wow.
She's not mystical. She's very practical. So she's like, well, I don't know what it is, but
That's cool though.
So I didn't get any information from her. So no, we haven't talked since then. We haven't.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about rainbow auras and things like that. But since you last were on, you had a QHHT session, which I've been super excited about hearing about. First off, let's just do kind of an overview of what the experience was like for you. That was your first one, right?
Yeah, it was my first one, and I came away with it, as I already said to you in our warm-up talk, with some mixed feelings about it. So I'm probably one of the rare people who would say that, because I'm super enthusiastic about reality, and I always find the good in everything. And in this case, there were some parts of it which I will share that were amazing and worthwhile, and other parts of it that I think there could have been some preemptive measures made so that I didn't have so much kickback and fallout from it. And part of the thing I want to say about going into a deep hypnotic state for anybody here is listening here, we all have the capacity to go into a deep state of trance, but I've been doing trance journey work shamanically for 20 years. And I started studying with shamans around the world in the year 2000. And shamanic trance journey practice work is my own way of meditating in a way. So I can go extremely deep very fast. And with that comes some caveats, I know that my practitioner was pretty happy with how deep I went because he kept wanting to ask questions for himself too at the end, like, guidance questions from his guides via me, my higher self. But, for anybody going into hypnosis as well, I would like, in a bit, I'm going to tell a little bit about some measures to take beforehand to avoid some fallout that you might experience physically and emotionally as well. The overall experience was that I went in with a bunch of questions that were mostly about the event, or about timelines and Earth, or about the nature of reality. I didn't really have a lot of personal stuff that I wanted to work on. So a great deal of the content I was quite excited by, because it was going past my thinking mind, and that watches a lot of stuff on YouTube and has a lot of ideas about life and about the event and ascension, and just bypassing all of that and getting down to what this essence or higher self within me had to say about it. So that was pretty cool. So I probably should share that stuff because it's probably more interesting than the preemptive things you do, not to get hung over from your QHHT.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel like, because once I heard that not everyone goes, to that, I can't even pronounce that word, that state of not really remembering. You're so deep, you have to kind of re-listen to the broadcast to even know what all was said. You said that you kind of got the overall gist of the topics discussed, but you didn't remember all the details coming out of it.
That's right. In fact, right away after the session, I debriefed with the practitioner, and I was literally asking him, I know that this part happened, but why? Like, I couldn't put the dots together. It'd be like kind of like seeing a bunch of containers of the themes that I was talking about, or that I was discovering in that deep state, but not being able to look inside the container. That would be the deep, so yeah, there was but it was interesting as well. I don't know if anyone else experiences this. As the days went on without actually watching the video, I began to remember more. So I thought that was interesting. That became like when you've had a dream and it's at the back of your mind, and then in the middle of the day you remember more details, and then
Right.
maybe the next day you remember a bit more. So the details themselves began to reoccur in my mind or my memory, or come back to me anyway. So there's that to think about. The mind doesn't really forget anything, even if it's in a deep trance. It records it all.
So what do you feel like, because this is sort of what I was worried about, if I was sort of conscious that I would color the information. So you actually got information that you pretty much know you didn't color it because it wasn't what you were expecting.
I'm never sure if I'm coloring something because I'm speaking, so I'm conscious enough to talk. So
Right.
in that sense, I'm quite aware that I'm lying on my bed and my mouth is moving and words are coming out. So to me, and maybe other people have a different experience. I wasn't so far gone that it would be like a complete amnesia of the event.
Right.
But it was a pretty deep trance, as trances go. So that's for sure. So one of the things that I experienced that surprised me, and it was the very beginning, is that the protocol of QHHT is to go back to a past life that's the most relevant, like that you need to work with now because there's something in that life that's unresolved. And I believe that's how it works. And so the first thing we did was go into a past life. He had me look at my feet, and after getting me into the deeper trance state. And where was I? And what really surprised me is that I have a lot of memories of many different past lives spontaneously, through dreams and meditation, mostly through dreams, like a handful of them anyway. And this one I had had memories of before. I vaguely got glimpses of it in dreams or meditations, but I didn't actually ever get the full import of that life. And that came through in the very beginning. It was extraordinarily emotional because I was in a scene in the first memory that I dropped into of a deluge, a flood. And it was rapid rising waters, and we were on an island. And it very much has the overtones of the Lemurian or the Atlantean storylines. And I remember, like, when I was in the hypnosis, the beginning of it was so emotional that I was shaking. My whole body was shaking, and I was breathing very heavy, like I was breathing in a panic breathe, like a flight and flight response.
Mhm.
And I was literally reliving the visceral panic and fear that I experienced in that life. And it activated the Kundalini energy in my body, which is very much connected to survival anyway, by the way, just one of the aspects of the coiled serpent. And so the next thing I know, I'm having a full blown, this is the first 5 minutes, Shane. I'm having a full blown Kundalini activation. And my hands I'm not just shaking from adrenaline. I'm having the full on streaming energy of the Kundalini going through my arms and my hands. Now, in that life, I basically was a part of a group of people in going into diaspora, getting on boats and getting off the island as fast as possible. But I was also a prophet or a seer, and I had already seen this coming. And there was a lot of just a lot of emotional charge around the fact that not enough people had listened to me beforehand, and we could have saved more. And I was just like awash with grief during some of this remembrance of this life. And and it's funny because now I understand something. Years ago, I saw the Titanic when it first came out. Like whenever that was, 20 years ago, the movie. And I was so overcome with emotion after the movie that I was in a depression for 3 days, and I cried all the way out of the movie theater to my car, sobbing all the way home. And that's not the kind of person I was in my 30s. I was very emotionally contained. And so I could never figure out why that movie hit me so hard. But it was about people being lost to drowning, basically, right? The ocean taking
Mhm.
over and sinking. So the land may have been sinking as well. I don't know it. I couldn't tell what was happening. But the important part of that dream, see, it feels like a dream or vision, was that my life this time is in a time of environmental peril and earth changes that are as significant. And so in that life, the diaspora, the boats leaving and the people leaving, my ship, my boat, went to sailing style boat, went to the coast of Mexico, which is a place I love, a particular area called Puerto Vallarta. And there's these three rocks called Los Arcos. And when I first went to Puerto Vallarta years ago, I was like overcome with a memory of being there. And now I know why. So we went there to relocate. And it was okay because whoever we were a more advanced civilization than the people who lived there, but we were very inclusive. And in fact, we knew this shoreline because we'd already sailed there. So it was familiar. And we relocated, and I lived in old age, and I was happy there. But the key piece that I was taking away from it very strongly at the end of that life was this life is a similar overlay. I am a psychic, and I worked as a psychic in my 30s professionally. I still do readings for people. I'm pretty amazingly accurate with people's timelines. I'm good at telling the past, present, and future. I can look at someone's timeline in the past, Shane, and say this something like this happened at age 7 or 8. Something happened at this age, and I'll describe it. Like yesterday, I had a client, and I told her she had a breech birth because she didn't want to come into this world, and she said, "Yeah." At the end of the reading, she said, "I had a breech birth. My mom, was difficult labor." So I'm just saying that not because I'm so great, because my psychic acuity is really high. And I say that because in this life, watching the sun turn white instead of yellow, seeing the rainbows that are never there before, like around the sun or the Rainbow Mountains, the strange changes we're having on the planet, looking at the environmental changes we're experiencing with the volcanic eruptions, and what seems to be like a lot of geomagnetic disruption in the sun hitting our Earth. When I look at all of that, I think I'm back in another life where I'm going to live through a catastrophe. And so I know that's not the cheerful ascension wave thing that everybody talks about. My dog agrees. I look at her. She's like, "Oh, catastrophe."
He's like, "Preach it."
But I think I could be the voice of sobriety in that sense, like
Yeah.
it's not that we're not going to, it's not that we won't be okay. A lot of us who are like in this room here today, and I don't have my chat box open, are really plugged in and tuned into their own divine current, to their own essence, to the greater good, all of that. And I feel a lot of us are going to be purposed here on a new earth. But it's not like the new earth doesn't have changes as well as, in other words, there's kind of a theory of the earth's dividing, the old earth and the new earth, the wheat from the chaff.
Right.
And that maybe the new earth is just the same as this one, but it doesn't have any problems on it. But that's not what happened in my QHHT. At one point, the practitioner had me go fly around the earth as if I was an out-of-body, flotation flying unit, and scan all the continents and see what they looked like from a satellite vision of the earth. And I was surprised to see coastlines had completely disappeared, and places where there are islands had become land masses. So the Bali, Malaysia, part of the world where you have all these islands are now, or will be, appears to be, land, like a mountainous land masses, not islands anymore, connected to each other, in fact. Places where you have oceans, shorelines, you no longer have shorelines, they're covered over. So like a lot of people have spoken of, who have been prophetic in the past, including Edgar Cayce, I believe, I didn't see a coastline that I recognize as California, nor did I see a coastline I recognized as, say, Washington State or Oregon. Those looked like they had gone underwater. Similarly, there was some changes in the African coastline. A lot of the European areas of the world, and those details I don't remember, and I did not write them down yet, but they are different as well. But there's not an area in the world that doesn't have some shifting geographical feature. Like South Africa, the Cape. I think the Cape wasn't the Cape anymore, as if I would recognize the geography. So, the point is that everything has a little bit of a different configuration, and the key that made the difference is water. Like water is where it used to be, or it has disappeared where it is now. So
I think one thing that really feeds into this whole thing is the fact that people see, we've seen the water leaving the coastline, like almost like the land's raising up.
yes.
And so I can definitely see some shifting, up and down shifting going, and it wouldn't take much, a couple of feet of shifting up or down, and you've got a completely different coastline. We've seen the water retreating off of certain coasts. You can see it going the other way on other coasts. What about the middle of the United States, where
it's a nice, safe place to be? So I know that everyone's worried about Old Faithful over there blowing up in the middle of the country, but it seemed like to me that you could basically, the East Coast and the middle of the country were fine, Canada and US. The challenging spots were all up the West Coast, quite significantly inland. I mean, significantly inland. I I was
You
rather
didn't
just
see the split from the Gulf all the way up to the Great Lakes, like they talk, basically where the Mississippi is, but much wider. Did you see anything like that?
I don't remember seeing that, but you know
Okay,
something, I was doing it like a satellite view of the Earth overview, and he didn't ask me to focus on anything specifically because I was such a deep trance. I'm so suggestible. Like I'm not navigating with agency, right? Because you're right. My own national curiosity, the Lori who's here talking, would go, "Wait a minute, I want to stop and look down at the Gulf." But
right,
because he was directing everything, like I was the eye, and he was like, "Now look over here, and what do you see here?" It's
right.
whatever he directed me to look at, which is interesting. That's how deep you go. There was no agency for me to choose a different direction to see. So
Plus, from pretty far away, so you're sort of just catching more
well,
of an
but
overview
he
than
could have said, now go in deeper, come in closer, or magnify the image. So
right.
so if you ever do a QHHT and that's information somebody wants, I would say to put that very directly in your instructions for your practitioner, that you
That's
would
good
like
advice.
to
Yeah.
be zoomed in, because I didn't even ask about Earth changes geographically. He added that as one of his own curiosities, I believe, near the end of the session. Um, there was something I wanted to say when you said coastlines changing. Yes, what I said to him in the session when he tried to ask me to describe what I at some point I had a way of describing it. I said it looks like everything sloshed over, like as if you took my Fiji water bottle. Yeah, I got a prop, and see the water's like that, right? But then something tips and now it's all sloshed. It's this way now. It literally, if I could say anything, if the Earth was to tilt on its axis, perhaps it would slosh water bodies significantly and permanently into a new configuration. So it felt like, because it was consistent slosh. In other words, it's like there's more water on the west coast of this country and this part of the world, and then it seemed like, I think it was the same on the other coast, like the coast of Africa. I have to go back and listen, but I felt something sloshed. The
And
best
I
way.
think that was actually the technical term that I can't remember. Retired Navy guy John something. I can't remember his name now, but he was talking about that same thing, like where the poles can shift, and there's actually, because of the rotation, there's more water, like 300 stories more water around the equator because of the rotation. And if that changes slightly, then they call it slosh. It's
Slosh.
funny
No,
that you use that word.
that is interesting because that's what I saw. I heard or saw the sense was slosh is the word I used. It's everything sloshed over. Something else you said about that tilting the Earth. Well, there's things we can't explain right now, like why there are like a lake bed at Lake Titicaca. Is way up in the top of a frigging Andean. 13,000 feet above sea level, perhaps. I'm not sure how high, but it's got ocean-like fossils and remnants of life that should have been at sea level. So, did something seriously geographically slosh in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Epochs ago, in which suddenly something that would have been um, something that would have been a sea level terrain became a mountainous terrain, right? So that could also happen. I'm just thinking if something sloshes, maybe, also that what I'm trying to say, the tectonic plates are also going to shift dramatically and
Mm-hmm.
cause, mountains to erupt and, things to sink. Which is why I want to go back to the sinking in this life of whatever it was. He asked me what it was called, and I said Anatolia. See, I didn't call it Atlantis, and I didn't call it Lemuria. So maybe there's something else there, like it's just a small island next to one of those two. But I called it Anatolia. I knew that this was going to happen so fast, like the Titanic. Right, you could play the music and stuff, but it's pretty quick. There's not a lot of time. It's very similar to what I experienced then. It was coming up quick enough for us to get into boats, but so it wasn't like Pompeii, where suddenly ashes covered you and you're gone. You
Right.
had time to get off the island, but not enough time for everybody. Which leads me to the next part of it, because we would have had to done it in stages if we had prepared in that life. We would have had to send people out, boats come back, send people out. We didn't have enough ships for the people on the land. The
Mm-hmm.
grief I experienced was tremendous. Similarly, in this lifetime, whatever we're going through, we have time to prepare. We have ample time to prepare and to tune into our higher self and go, where am I supposed to be physically, geographically? Like I'm leaving Vancouver, moving to the east coast of Canada. I don't know why. I'm going to do that in the spring. I just know I'm supposed to leave the west coast.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's funny because just who was it? Ronnie from Florida was like, she wanted to move near the mountains up in Virginia from down in Florida somewhere, and that was pretty much, she said she has family there, but she was just wanting to be by the mountains. And I would say, listen to yourself. If you feel like, for some reason, I just want to move to the middle of Colorado for some reason, do it. It could be
Exactly.
your higher self telling you to get out of wherever the heck you are. You know what I
I,
mean?
I know people who are suddenly leaving Vancouver for no good reason. You know what I mean? Like, it's not really important reasons, just that I just don't feel I want to be here anymore. So there's that. So that's the thing that I didn't expect, actually, to see that kind of hardcore earth changes material. I wasn't looking for that. I was very much in alignment with a lot of the more I don't know, the ascension-y kind of vibe, that I
Yeah.
was with the earth change vibe. And so that's changed for me. So there was a bit of a hangover from that as well, emotionally, by the way, at the end of my session and the day or two after. But that wasn't what I meant with QHHT hangovers. But I did have an emotional residue from having relived a trauma and from knowing that this planet is going to have some similar upsets, and I'm here to do it all over again.
Oh yeah, I can see how that can, yeah,
Yeah. So.
spark up some old feelings you didn't know were there and stuff.
Oh yeah, totally sparked up some old feelings. I didn't know were there, nor did I expect such an emotional charge. Even though I realized I was in my bed still, like in other words, again, I'm still conscious that I'm lying on my bed talking, but I was so immersed in that moment. I was so vividly there. It was a very vivid dream. Yeah, like a lucid dream.
Well, don't
Um,
they, the practitioners generally tell you to just try to be the observer if they see you're getting too.
he did try to calm me down. Yeah, so it's like to pull me out of the. I think if I can't remember exactly what it said, but yeah, it depends on where you drop in. I dropped right into the middle of the evacuation,
Right.
and also my sense of what was it? I knew I was going to get off the island safely, but I recognized that a lot of people weren't, and I felt bad for that. Right? I felt like we didn't prepare. So I
Mhm.
guess the message coming from me at this time in my life is that to the degree to which I can use my clairvoyant ability to foresee for myself and others what is necessary to be prepared and to be in a place of safety and rebuilding is great. So the other surprising thing I saw, which I'm really reluctant to say about the future Earth, because I feel like it's too woo-woo, but I'm going to say it. We were living in cities that didn't look like humans built them.
Mm. That sounds
That
interesting.
really surprised me. So instead of like encampments of, newer survivors rebuilding the world from scratch.
That's good because I watch The Walking Dead, and I think I just would hate a world like that. Not, I
I
mean,
know.
besides the zombie part, but that recovery sort of view where it's
I know,
like,
me too. I keep thinking, do I need to go out there and learn the herbs and the vegetables in the forest that I can, forage for safely without perishing because I ate the poison one? I keep
right,
wondering, do I need to take those courses? But I haven't been guided to that. So then I'm thinking, okay, so why not? Because otherwise I would. So I guess I'm not a survivalist at heart. And so what I saw um, these kinds of very simple, geometrically simple but beautiful cities that had been constructed from what reminded me of ancient Greece in a way, like where you had the columns and the marble and, very a big open, a lot of open air structures in parts of the world I was looking at, um, Parthenoni. But I got that there were other beings there with humanity. And in the session, the sense was he asked me which types were there, I believe, and I described them. One of them were the tall, like the Nordic-looking beings. I think I call them Nordic. I've had dreams of them. They're blue-eyed, tall, and very fair.
mhm.
And the other ones were kind of the blue-tinged beings, blue-skinned tinged beings. And the point about that was that I felt like it was no big deal. Like those of us sticking around for the redo here on Earth. I don't know what happens to the people who aren't here. That's the thing. I didn't get that. He didn't ask that. Maybe timelines do diverge. Maybe metaphysically there is a new Earth, but still it has geographical changes. But one of the things that I kept saying in the session over and over, I believe, was something like, the Earth is changing and she's taking us with her, but not all of us are coming. That was kind of the way it sounded. Like, you know, we're piggybacking on her changes, right? What we're calling waves and ascensions are also the actual being of the Earth. Her consciousness, her beingness is also changing. And with her inner changing is the outer surface changes that we're seeing, right? With the animals, with the land, with the volcanoes, etc. So we're all intertwined and entangled with the earth and her changes. It's not just us. And so the earth is changing and taking her with us, except not everybody's going to come. I don't know why.
That
That
makes
really,
sense.
really bothered me, actually.
Well, how were they connected as far as from what you saw as like sort of these changes with that look like slosh as we spoke about, and these new cities? Was there a connection between them, or could you have been seeing two different timelines, or what are your thoughts with that?
um, there was a feeling that it was post slosh that I'm looking at these reconstructed cities. Okay,
Like
so
into the future
into the future,
sometime?
yeah. And I was bird's eyeing them. I wasn't in them, like on the ground, right? So I was looking at them as sort of like city states, actually. You know, I mean, like they were governing their own. Each city was self-governing, but yet in contact with the others. One of the definite senses in that vision was that the Earth had far fewer people on it. You know, it was. Really vastly underpopulated compared to our billions of people right now. But each of these cities seemed to be quite thriving, and everything was in a kind of state of equilibrium. And again, there was a feeling, because I wasn't on the ground, so it was a feeling that even though there were non-human entities there, beings, whatever you want to call them, interdimensional beings, I don't know if they are, that they weren't scary, or nor were they overlords. It was a cooperative endeavor. It was they had created these cities for the new Earth people.
So like maybe they just had better technology and they were, building stuff in a much quicker way,
Well,
hopefully.
I kind of think of it like, how do you get those massive monoliths at Peru and other places? I've been to
Yeah.
Machu Picchu, and with the precision tolerance between the stones. We all know that stuff if you ever research it.
Hmm.
And there's a sense that sometimes it looks like they were molten at one point and hardened, even though they're granite. Other times the speculation is that they were gravity devices or anti-gravity to just simply could move the blocks once they were carved. But again, I don't know, but maybe that same technology still exists, with whoever created those massive, massive monuments that are still here on the planet. Um, so that's why I hesitated to say that, because it puts me right out there in Mulu land for eternity. I'm here, I'm on this forum, and it persists. It will it'll haunt me.
Oh, you're in the right crowd here, definitely. Because yeah, I've always anybody who's really looked into it, you can see they say that we couldn't do some of the stuff we observe even nowadays, like the size of these rocks and like you were saying, the tolerance where you can't even slide a thin piece of paper between these cuts. And these are unanswered questions, and I often think of this. I'm like, what the heck was going on? I mean, this is solid proof, no pun intended, of something huge that happened in our past that we have no idea about. So.
Yes. Yeah, I concurred. I totally do. Having been there at Machu Picchu, at the Giza Plateau, touching these stones, looking at them closely in my own experience, there is just the mind can't put it together as, the way it's done, today, or could have been done then even today, some of the construction can't be replicated. So it's pretty amazing. So the other thing that I wanted to point out about that QHHT, because then I have a couple of things that I think are really cool about entanglement and synchronicity that I wanted to mention, is that
Mhm.
I want to talk about hangovers, because there's a way to prevent them, and I had a pretty serious hangover from it. And one of the things I want to say to people going into a QHHT is always use your own inner system as you go into it for, let's call it, protection. For lack of a better word, I'm shamanically trained, for years and years, and there's protective mechanisms that you put into place before you go into a trance. Whether you burn some sage or do a ritual, invoke, the angels and archangels, guidance, your guides. However you do it is fine. I have a protocol that I do, and it's very specific, and I've done it for years. And it involves a column of light that comes around me, and it's very, very safe in that column. And the only thing that can come through, I also use the same column of light when I do readings for clients. The only thing that can enter this column of light is something of the highest energetic frequency. So in other words, not any old dead person can talk to me.
Right.
If you're an asshole dead person, you're not talking to me at all.
Right.
you have to be got a little bit of more purity going on. So because
Right.
I'm also a medium, I can see. I talk to dead people. So this call of the light is very effective, and I've never doubted. But what happened was for me, and it's probably something we can all think about, because I'm familiar with my call of the light and I use it effortlessly. I could have put it in place before we actually began the session. In hindsight, I should have done that, because as I was going into hypnosis, the protocol that I was given to protect myself was a pyramid of light. And the problem is that it caught me up in a confusing visual spatial conundrum. Am I standing in a pyramid of light? Am I lying on the bottom of the floor of the pyramid of light? Am I hovering in the middle of this pyramid of light? I couldn't really get into my pyramid of light, the protection, right? And so I don't think it was very effective because, one, it's not my visual, doesn't fit for who I am. And it didn't necessarily work, because I'll tell you what happened. And so the thing I'm saying is that I would say to every practitioner out there, or to anyone who's going into it, start the session before you even go into hypnosis with your particular mechanisms for that protective field. And then if your practitioner is going to give you a visual for, once you're in the hypnosis, a protective field, maybe before you go in, discuss it with that person and say, this is how I do it. I need this image. Because, if a pyramid didn't work for me because I was visually, spatially fucked up, I was like, where am I in this pyramid? Then, it was useless, basically. So I kind of would say I went in there without any real shields for the whole session. And one of the things that kicked back at me was, at some point he asked me for a past, do I have any things in my energy field or in my body scan that needs to be removed, like an attachment or a cord or something that's negative, and I've done so much work on that stuff that I really was surprised to find that I had an attachment from a past life that you would call maybe an entity if you were, wanting to, but you could call it what you like. It was lodged in my solar plexus, right? Like your stomach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me to remove it, and I'm under hypnosis. Okay, I'm going to remove it. And I did. And this past life was France at the end of the 1780s France. And I could see visuals of what happened in that life that I had accrued this attachment. I was a priest or a cleric, actually, kind of made a deal with the devil. But the reason this attachment was still in my body was because I died without clearing it in that life, by the guillotine, actually. And I didn't, and it's so deeply hidden because it's from another life that I never noticed it. And then, I don't know what the cause, what chaos or havoc it might try to cause when it was there in my life, but it was just lingering there. So I took it out as per instructed. So it's like psychic surgery on self, removing the entity. And that was fine. But what I didn't do and wasn't instructed to do, and shamanically it would have been wise, was then to make sure that that vacant space has a no vacancy sign on it. That's literally, it's like the room. Imagine you have a hotel room that just got cleared out. You want to close the door, and then you want to say, no, do not disturb, or no vacancy. You don't want something else to enter that new empty space. Well, I would have done that if I was not deeply tranced, but he didn't suggest that. So I ended up with an open space within me where something had departed, and now anything could slip right in. So I know this is going to sound very much like we're talking about a movie like The Exorcist or something, but if I can tell you, I'm very grounded and down to earth in a lot of ways. And so I don't go around seeing entities on every single person, they're not that common. But this entity left, and I didn't realize it, but something slipped in. And so that's where my hangover was. So I was physically quite unwell for the first 2 days after. I was in bed. I had a migraine headache right after, like smashing migraine. I had to go to bed right away. I slept for 12 hours. The migraine ended the next day. I didn't feel physically great. I had low energy. I didn't feel well. And I was sort of slogging around. And the guy that did me for the session was on a silent retreat. I did write him to tell him what was going on, that this is happening, and he gave me some suggestions, but then he was out of commission for a week, so I couldn't reach him. And so what's interesting about this is a kind of a funny story. I have a friend who's a gifted entity remover. She's a lovely woman, and she sees them, and she knows if someone's got one, and she's very good at lifting them out and stuff. So that day I knew something was off with me. So I got in touch with her to talk with her and say, I'm not feeling great. And she said, oh my gosh, she said, she said, you've taken something on. Now, I've talked to her a lot, and she didn't see the old entity. It was quite buried, but she saw this one. And she said, you've taken on something in your QHHT. Something came in. And, she said, but I've got the feeling that you can remove it yourself. You don't need my help, or you don't need any big deal. You can get rid of it. So I trusted her. I trust myself. So I have this like little kind of Tibetan thing. It's like a dorje. It's good for protecting you against entities and shamanically. And you can also, people don't realize shamanic culture is quite, the Tibetan culture is quite shamanic, the original culture. And I put it out on my porch on the sun to charge it up. And I was going to do like a meditation and light some sage and do some kind of like deep meditation trance to remove whatever had lodged in my solar plexus. I didn't have a chance. This is the funniest part. About an hour after I took the dorje thing out to charge it in the sun, it's made of brass, but it seems like I wanted to put it in this. And the intention was set to remove whatever had infiltrated. I went to my fridge to get some kombucha. My daughter was in the house and she came in with a friend of hers. So I wasn't paying attention. I was talking to her in the kitchen. I opened the kombucha, brand new bottle up. I poured it into a glass. I took a sip. I went, what did I just swallow? What did I just swallow? Oh my God. That was not drinkable. I smelled the bottle. It smelled like a cross between a rotting dead animal and the worst dumpster bin in New York City in the middle of summer.
Oh God.
I dumped the rest of the bottle out. I kept a little bit in case I had to sue the manufacturer or something because I didn't know what I'd ingested. And I thought, oh God, I just got some oregano oil and hope that would clear, and a little garlic pill, hope that would clear any bacteria that was in my stomach. But then within like 20 minutes or less, 10 minutes of having ingested the kombucha, I was in the bathroom for 10 minutes throwing up violently.
Oh wow.
It was crazy, man. I was like throwing up. I hadn't had any food in my system. So it was just the little bit of kombucha, some water that I drank, a little bit of the, but so a lot of retching really. But up came the amount of kombucha that I had swallowed at the very least. Now, what's interesting is that then I felt great. All of my freaking symptoms of like malaise and achy body and the low-grade headache that still persisted after the migraine and stuff was gone. So I called my girlfriend up and I said, I'm going to tell you what happened and you tell me what you think it is. And she said, oh, you ejected the entity from your solar plexus via the rotten kombucha vomit.
Oh wow, that's so wild, dude.
It's very shamanic. In shamanic cultures, they're often invite a sort of a homeopathic remedy. One thing that makes you sick, an entity in your solar plexus, put something else that's sick, makes you sick in there, and you can ride, and the negative energy will ride out with the other one. Blah. So that's kind of funny. So then I was fine after that. I felt great. But this is happening 3 days after my session. So I'm still hungover. This is day 3 of after my session. So it took me that long to resolve what was happening in this body from that kind of unpreparedness that I went into the session with by not protecting myself. Now, I know that for some people that may not be a paradigm that resonates, at all. But if you don't believe in, the way I'm expressing it, then just whatever you believe in, like ask, Jesus or Mother Mary, or do some kind of invocation to what your deepest connection spiritually is, to something has got your back, that you trust, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's great information too. So that's wild. So there really was something wrong with the drink then.
Oh no, the drink. I still have the rotten bottle in my fridge with a little residue in the bottom because I still not sure if I want to go to the company and say it's a local Vancouver company. It's local brewed kombucha. If I want to go and have them give me like a year's worth of free kombucha for not making it public.
Right.
But I also want them to see the batch number and say maybe you need to do a recall.
Right. I just thought maybe it just seemed that way to you. Like maybe it was fine, but maybe.
Oh, no, it really wasn't fine.
Oh, okay.
But I've been drinking kombucha for like a decade, and I've never had a kombucha bottle that had gone into some sort of severe bacterial rancidity like that. That's very odd.
So and then that really brought up the other question I had. Do you think, there was some supernatural thing that helped you eject this out? Something like your higher self manipulated the drink?
I think there's no way in a million years I could have drunk that if I had been aware. Like, right. I mean, I had to be distracted enough talking to my daughter, who walked into the kitchen with her friend just as I was like pulling the bottle and going like that, talking to them like this, kind of half-assed, looking at her. And Because even if you look at it in the glass, it was so cloudy. Kombucha is clear. This drink was translucent. Like already, I wouldn't have, if I had looked as I poured,
Right.
I wouldn't have drunk it. So there's so many ways that I got duped into that one.
Maybe in a good way though.
In a good way. It was a good reason to throw up.
That is so wild. So do you, okay, because I don't remember where it was. It was some story in the Bible where it's like says like if you expel if you like expel an evil entity out, but it's seven more come and they find an empty, swept clean place to reside if the person doesn't. I mean, it sounds almost like what you're just saying there. Like if you get something out, you want to make sure you close it off and fill it up with light
Yeah.
or something to.
Absolutely. You do. You just do. I mean, I would say the same as if you're doing a healing and like you're working on healing something in your body, and like say it's psychic surgery and you're removing something energetically, a physical ailment or whatever. You still want to make sure that what has left and vacated is no longer, the space that it has vacated is no longer available because, it's that expression, the universe abhors a vacuum, right? I mean, it wants to rush in to fill empty space. So, yeah, so there's just a little tip. And I think when you look at QHHT, it's not coming from a shamanic background. It's coming from a hypnotic background, a hypnosis technique background. That's completely two different worlds. And it would behoove a lot of QHTT types to learn a little bit about shamanic wisdom traditions because I think it's naivety. I don't think it's causing harm on purpose. It's not understanding the parameters. The last thing about that is that a lot of the people in this room listening to this and who will listen to this are quite bright beings, like like you and me and others in this room, whether we call ourselves rainbow auras or new earthers or earth angels, as Nathan
Mhm.
Sanders. We have a lot of bright light, and there's again, without sounding too like dramatic and gothic, there are forces prevailing that would prefer that the bright lights get dimmed down. And so, if you're just curious about QHHT and doing it for fun and you're not really on the spiritual path, maybe nothing like this would happen anyway. But if you're on a spiritual path and you're committed to awakening your own self and the others and the collective and bringing goodness and transformation to the world, then in a lot of ways you really do have to respect the fact that you're bright enough to attract the negative energies, like moss, to a flame, that would rather you not be so damn bright. you know?
So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So you said you had something else with it that
Oh,
was.
you know what? There's a synchronicity thing that's happening to people I know, and it's myself as well. That I thought I would just bring it up for people here because,
Yeah, because everybody can chime in.
yeah, because if I think about synchronicity and operating from the system of paying attention to these meaningful coincidences, I have been doing that now for most of my life, but most intensely for about a decade. And what I'm seeing in my own world, in the world of others close to me, and in some of the groups I'm involved in, and my students, I teach a class right now of 150 students in a course online. I taught that class 2 years ago. This is probably a good barometer. And it's called the 40-Day Magic Challenge. And one of the things that I teach people most often is how to harness synchronicity, how to use synchronicity to navigate your life with greater ease and flow, and to be attuned to what's being asked of you in life, so that you're not swimming upstream. You're literally going with the current.
Hmm.
And teaching that course twice 2 years ago and teaching it again today, there's no comparison, Shane, between the way people are experiencing synchronicity with absolute overwhelming, like crazy assness, like hyper-synchronicity, and the other phenomena. So, like having lots of synchronicities easily and quickly, and understanding the meaning of it, as opposed to like, oh, I had a synchronicity once when I was 12. And then the other part of it is that they're entangling quickly. Entanglement, like quantum entanglement, where two particles can interact. One does one thing, the other acts as if it's still connected across space and time. So it's kind
Spooky
of,
action at a distance.
yeah, spooky action at distance. Yes,
Yeah.
Einstein didn't like that one.
Mhm.
So we've got this entanglement thing going on in my class, but I'm also seeing it in Nathan Sanders' group, mysticism, synchronicity, and the Mandela effect. Lots of super intense entanglement where other people are having synchronistic events for other people in the group. So literally, or dovetailing with other people's synchronicity. So that, like an example might be, like Nathan is posting a song on his group about the word illumination and asking for a real life confirmation, because he always does this. For those who don't know, it's using music as a vehicle for synchronistic music shuffles on an iPod or on a Spotify or Pandora to get information synchronistically. And so Nathan owns this group, and he'll put something up like illumination, and then I'll be driving and I'll be behind a license plate that has the word illumination, but I haven't even seen his post yet. I haven't been online. So then I come home to my computer after driving and seeing illumination on a license plate, and then he's just posted it 5 minutes, earlier. So this kind of reverse causality, retro causality, this entanglement. So I just want to bring it up to everybody here. I think it's a sign of this acceleration that we're all experiencing as we move closer to some kind of event horizon. That event horizon is what everyone calls the event, and I think it does come in waves, and it does come gradually, but at some point it's going to go over an edge, and
Yeah.
it's going to be an all or nothing proposition. And as we get closer to that event horizon, things are happening as a back ripple from space-time factor. And one of the things that's happening is more people are having synchronicities, more people are entangled more quickly with others in shared synchronicities, shared dreams, telepathy, and all of that. And people who you would think would never get it, like you think they're too salt of the earth or down to earth, who would never go in this direction, are suddenly going in the direction of magical, synchronistical, a way of being in the world. So there's so much going on right now. I'm just like, teaching my course right now and watching what people are doing compared to 2 years ago. It's like a quantum leap of people's ability to harness synchronicity with ease and to play in this land of hyper awareness of reality.
So
That
you're
it's
finding for a lot of people it's already happening then, and for the synchronistic events happening
yeah. So like it's like, well, what I mean is that even the people
compared to
joining,
2 years ago.
yeah, people 2 years ago, people were needing to be handheld a lot in order for them to get it, and this time around, they're like they're charging ahead without me. I'm the teacher, right, the leader of the group, but they're like off on their own. They're just like wildly, their capability, their capacity, their like, it's like, amazing. Synchronicity is a way of dialoguing with reality, basically. So if this is a matrix or a simulation, then you can get synchronicity as the lucid dreamer, like in the dream, aware that this can't be exactly what it is because things are happening in a way that doesn't make sense. Or you could look at it like a glitch in the matrix, like with a cat that went by twice in the movie The Matrix. Synchronicities are there to partly get our attention, that this isn't what it seems. And secondly, to then, once we pay attention, to give us guidance through synchronistic patterns, and connecting dots of those patterns as to what the messages really are about. Because, synchronicity isn't just for entertainment. It is purposeful. If we're willing to listen and dialogue with it, it will lead us in a direction of our greater good. That's
I
my
totally
experience.
agree. And that's sort of how I say I live my life through open and closed doors. A lot of times, whether I walk through a door or not will depend on whether I get synchronicities surrounding that. It's like, oh, I just heard this, and that's totally separate, but it's pointing to this doorway here that I should walk through. And even having Nathan on the show, I had so many synchronicities about having him on, even though I caught a lot of flack from a lot of people that were like, I think it's AI, I think it's this and that. I'm like, I've had too many synchronicities not to have him on sharing this story. For some reason, he's supposed to be on here sharing this. He's actually going to be on tomorrow, going more into his near-death experience that he had.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm excited about that. That's tomorrow at 1:30.
And so when you said you listen to the synchronicity despite your reservation, right? Like you're like unsure. Um, the reward is obvious, right? Because he's done quite well now on his own, and people love his content. So your initial hunch was right, but we'll never know the consequence of not listening to our synchronistic guidance. And then that's the thing that always kind of makes me wonder, like what did we miss when we tune out and say no to the thing that's trying to be the goodness that's trying to happen through us? Uh, I'm sure Nathan would have found another way into the world, another midwife. You were his midwife. But nonetheless, if you weren't his midwife, I wouldn't probably be here right now talking as well, because I got pulled into the SAM content and really got excited. And I started following you a lot more than I ever had. So there's so many ways that, we'll never know what goodness is missing in our lives because we tuned out that synchronistic awareness. And we heard it and we decided from fear to ignore the signal. In my class, there's a technique I teach. I'm going to share with you guys because it's fun and it's easy, and it was one of the biggest hits in the class. and it's called a cladon, Cledon, and it's an old ancient, like it goes back to antiquity, ancient Greece, and it's a technique for getting synchronistic guidance through random intersections with other people in what you overhear in their conversation. And what's really cool about that is it used to have people who actually did this, like mystics, and what would you call them, like seers, prophets and seers, who would like want to give information to, like, the senator or the governor in ancient Rome or in ancient, Greece. And they would go sit in the center of a noisy, busy market and just tune into what they could overhear as people passed with a question, right? Like, tell me about, is it safe here, or should we like abandon, or, should we go to war against, Sparta or something? And just sitting in the middle, and whatever random clips of, sound bites of information through people's conversations they got, they would have an idea of what the answer is. So the Cladon is so much fun, because if you're in a Starbucks coffee shop waiting in line or whatever, or you're doing something at the grocery store or anywhere, just where there's people wandering around you, if you have the attention to use that technique of overhearing snippets of conversation for a particular question, you will be blown away, honestly, by what you get to hear. It'll be a direct confirmation. Like, it's so crazy. Like, it's so specific to you. Like, one of my students had a great example. She had, how did that work for her? Oh, I can't remember that one. One of mine was, I was thinking of moving to Montreal right away this fall, and I didn't. I'm going to do it next spring. And I got a song on the shuffle. It was called Traveling Without Moving. But then I overheard a conversation the same day about a woman and talking to her friend in Starbucks saying, I was thinking of moving this year, but I'm going to wait. So, I mean, okay, a song called Traveling Without Moving. So it's saying, no, you can travel, but don't move. But then yet, and then this conversation that I overheard. So that's a fun one to play with, because it's
I have already noticed that. I didn't know that was like something you could practice, but I've often got stuff like that where people are walking by, they're talking about something completely unrelated to the question I have in my mind, but that one little sentence I hear as they're passing by, those few words, I'm like, holy crap, that was totally for me, and they have no idea that they just sent me that message in their conversation.
absolutely.
Oh yeah. That's why I tell people, pay attention to everything, every sign you see, every song you hear being played, even a car driving by playing something, or the DJ on the radio of a car playing by, he'll say something, and it's like, the more you pay attention, the more you realize that this reality we're in is not, it's so orchestrated seeming once you start paying attention to these things. It's amazing.
It is so amazing. And it always begs a question. Like, I came out of a movie theater with my daughter the other day. We went to see Deadpool 2. I have to say, it's pretty funny. And it's not my thing, but she dragged me to it. So we went to see it, and we were leaving the movie theater. And this is what I mean by synchronicity and telepathy lately. But I walked out of the movie theater thinking, as I looked at the sky and the strange color and the strange moon that was rising, it was early evening here. I thought, oh my God, I thought to myself, this looks like a simulation. This doesn't look real. And then we're walking a little further. My daughter says, it looks like a simulation here, doesn't it? And I said, I know. I think that's it. And the reason I brought that up, that's a telepathy thing, is because reality is trying to tell us something. It isn't real.
Totally.
I don't know what it is, but it's not real.
Yeah, I had the same thing happen. What was it? Oh, it was nebula. I looked up a picture of a nebula it was back when we were looking at the eye, the 222 date thing with the eye, and I pulled up the eye nebula, and then I like go out of the room. My daughter separately, she's like, "What's a nebula?" I'm like, what? How's that word? That word doesn't come up, within the same hour like that. It's like, that's like maybe in a year you might, and I thought, oh, well, maybe she was watching my chat or something, and she said, she was watching some meme or something that was supposed to be funny, and it said something like, doesn't this look like a nebula? It was completely different. So it wasn't like she was watching the live stream, but
exactly.
It was, that kind of stuff is happening all the time.
That kind of weird enmeshment of people's realities bleeding through and, influencing each other in unseen, unknown, unexplainable ways. But that's what's exciting about reality to me right now, is it is so flimsy. It's so flimsy. And it's like, oh my God, it's like, that Plato's cave, the allegory, where, you got the fire behind the guys who see the shadows on the wall. And so they think the shadows on the wall are real, right? And that's what reality is, until finally, well, I don't know if I ever figure it out, but the true reality is they're real, and the source of the the light is causing this reflection of what's real. So in a way, I think that's what's happened, is that or like a nested reality in the movie Inception. Maybe we're nested in a lower dream state reality from what's the true place where we reside as consciousness. But whatever it is, something is happening where things are factoring in and things are coming together for most people I know who are on the spiritual path, let's call it that, where reality is trying to wake them up. And even those Bible changes, like the Lion and the Lamb and many others that are out there right now, even those Bible changes, I mean, you can't get a better wake-up call than, especially if you're on a spiritual path and you believe that the Bible has value, and I think it does, like any spiritual text, and the content is changing.
Right, in an impossible way. And for people who see it, some people are really freaked out about it. They think the devil got a hold of it. And I'm like, dude, even in a world where, if you believe God is sovereign and has control over everything, you're saying that you think the devil pulled a fast one over God? He swapped out some verses, some words in the Bible, and God didn't know about it? I mean, even if it was, God allowed it for some reason. Why? You know what I mean? It's like at the root of it all, if you really believe in some kind of sovereign, benevolent being, you've got to believe that he's in control, or he's allowing things to happen in a way, because I know it's awakened a lot of people to this sort of flimsy nature we're talking about here about reality.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's two things that are happening with every change that we're seeing. One is a wake-up call, like, because it doesn't seem possible for those who notice the changes. And the second one is probably, if someone could actually really get deep into it, I know some people try to find out if there's meaningful changes, like, that you can string the dots together and connect them and have it become a message of some sort itself, a code, right? And I think there may be a code embedded in what the changes are. And when you have enough data and you have enough time, someone has enough time to sift through it all, might be able to decode it. So I think there's two things happening at once there. I think it's a general wake-up call, and there's the decoding. I don't know many people in my own world who haven't been Mandela affected and they're aware of it. So I don't hang out with people for some reason. Even my whole family knows about it, and they all see it. But I still don't understand why some people don't. And so, because if it's a wake-up call or a signal, how come some people can't see it?
That's the $1 million question. Yeah.
I really ponder that a lot, because if this earth is changing and everybody doesn't change to the new earth with it, whatever that looks like, then is it connected to those people who are still fast asleep? And why are they still fast asleep? That's the question. And I don't get it, but I know a lot of anguish for people who have family members who don't get it, and that's really a painful thing. And I can't imagine.
The other thing that gives me a little more patience about that whole situation is that even within the people who do see the changes, some changes, they're like, no, I remember it always being the new way. And it's like, that's, to me, that's way more mind-blowing, because it's like, how did they see it in this new way? And it's always been that way for them. Like someone saw the JFK footage, and they're like, no, I remember it always being 6 people in the car. I'm like, what? That's so new to me. It's like, but they see other changes. So I know it's not like they're just not seeing it, like so many people are blinded to it.
No, my sister's one of those. My youngest sister, has a lot of the same recognitions about the changes, but she has, I think it's a JFK car. She thinks there were 6 as well. So there's certain, weird ways that works.
It's micromanaged in a way, it seems.
It is. It's kind of like, you can't just say we're in a new earth. Like people go, oh, we're in the Orion's belt now, and Orion's sort of spur on the.
Right. You're from Sagittarius, like me. Because
I don't think it's that simple. I think you can't, it's too nuanced for that. One of the things that really opened my eyes about the Mandela effect the most recently, it's happened like a few months ago, because I've known about it for a year, thanks to my daughter, is that I had written an article on my blog, The Awakened Dreamer, about the Mandela effect and explaining how it works a few months back. And one of the examples I used was the shocking loss of "We Are the Champions of the World" from the Queen song, because I had spent days pouring through videos going, I can't find it anywhere. Where did it go? Except in some strange covers. The residue would be like somebody else was singing Queen's song, a cover artist was singing it on their YouTube channel, like home with their banjo or whatever, and they were singing "We Are the Champions" phrase of the world. But everywhere else, including Queen singing their own song, it had gone. And when you Googled the Genius lyrics and all those lyrics people, it was gone from the lyrics as well. My ex-husband, very down-to-earth guy, he was with me the day we both searched everywhere for it and couldn't find it. So I assumed it was still gone. And so when I posted my article, I got a bunch of comments saying, "What are you talking about? It's there." Ah! It's the flip-flop.
Oh, it's back again?
It's back again.
I had no idea. Somebody sent me residue where it was an old album cover and it had the lyrics. I'm like, there's the lyrics right on the back of the album cover.
The scary part about that is when you tell people, oh, like the Mandela effect, there's no of the world, and they haven't heard of the Mandela effect, and they go listen to it and it's there, they think you're nuts.
Right.
But people like you and me, and those of us who went through the first version, the missing version, and it's back again, right? We know that it was gone. But you know how you have the thinker for you with this super clear knowing because you had the statue as a child that it was on the forehead.
Yeah.
And that's your non-negotiable, right? You'll never not know that true. I think for me, this was a turning point because I had been so disturbed by the of the world being gone that I was looking for it, telling friends, got my husband looking for it with me because we both love the song, ex-husband. Like we're doing all this together to find the damn missing line. And I was disturbed that it was gone. And so when it came back again, that's when I'm like, oh my God, this is really flimsy. This reality is playing games with me.
Yes, definitely. That's how it was for the Houston, we've had a problem. And that was my first flip-flop, is that because when I heard it, it was like, Houston, we've had a problem. I'm like, that doesn't sound too wrong, I guess. I'm like, and I was really pondering, was it Houston, we have a problem, or Houston, we've had a problem? And then it switched back. And then there were still videos where these people were arguing about it. It was never Houston, we have a problem. But that's what it was. So it's like, it was like, wow, dude, this is so crazy.
It is so crazy. And only the Mandela aware, who especially ones who research it, can see the flip-flops so clearly, right? In other words, like an average person who just knows about the Mandela effect, who doesn't actually want to dig in, often won't notice a flip-flop. Like you didn't even know that it had changed again. So.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't sure about the first one, but I knew that when it changed back, because I had thought about it so hard, trying to remember. I'm like, I just can't be sure of it. And I don't, put much weight in my memory at all. So for me to see these changes, because I know how fallible the memory is, how unreliable the memory is. So when I see a change, it's because it's not really a memory thing. It's like, I know I stared at that statue growing up so much. And
So I know. The thinker for me is one of those pretty solid ones too. There's one last thing I was going to mention. I think I will because I've already went so far out on the woo-woo then now. I guess I can go.
I love the woo-woo stuff, so no
I'm
problem.
all the way out there. In addition to finding that the synchronicities are increasing and stuff, and people's telepathic abilities and entanglement, having enmeshment of synchronicities are happening everywhere I look with people I know because I'm teaching a course in it. I'm seeing it more often than you or others would see maybe. But one of the things that I'm noticing as well for myself and others is a strange surreal quality to reality, but I'm not too sure that reality is surreal or my perception is that way. And it's happening more and more often and frequently, almost like having an epileptic seizure in the sense that it comes and then it goes, but and then I go, whoa, that was weird. But it's like walking around and suddenly looking at a flower and going to myself, it's way too yellow. It's never been that yellow. What is with that yellow? And then wandering around usually these episodes last for 2 or 3 hours, and wandering around while I'm still in that state of hyperacute awareness of the unreal colors, for instance, then everything starts to have a surreal quality, like a dreamlike quality. And I can also find myself nostalgic for reality as if it's gone, as if that what we experience now has long, and I'm in some kind of memory loop, and so there's a bittersweet nostalgia. There's a kind of a sense of savoring it, like I got to live it again and go back. And I know this is very odd. I know other people who are reporting the same thing right now, so I'm not the only one. I think it's a new a wave effect, let's call it that way. It only started happening to me in earnest like in the last 2 months. So when it's happening, it's quite okay. It's like, wow, colors are too vivid, extra vivid. Reality is surreal and it feels nostalgic and bittersweet. I'm sentimental for it as I experience it. I think it would almost be like if you had a near-death experience and you got to go back and live relive some of your highlights of your life, you might have that bittersweet nostalgia for it. So it's very strange, and it's new for me. It's only in the last 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks. And I keep asking other people to describe it too and share that with me. So if anybody in the chat hasn't ever experienced that, or you listen to this later and you have, I make a comment and I'll connect with you, because it's odd. It's a really odd and new phenomenon.
What you're talking about now has happened to me twice, not for nearly that long, only for a few minutes. And then my son said it happened to him twice at school, and he was around the same person. I'm getting a little bit of an echo back there. Let me see here.
Okay.
But yeah, my son said it happened twice around the same person, where everything just seemed fake, like ultra, like a simulation. For me, it was combined with emotions, though, like what you're talking about. It was like I was remembering something. And the emotions were so overwhelming, and I just couldn't grasp what it was I was remembering. But I've gotten that twice.
I know what you mean. There's a strong emotional component to it, and for me,
bittersweet. It was happy, but it was sad. It was like I missed it, but it was like
yes, it's happy, but it's sad. It's sweet with the sour. It's both at the same time.
Yeah.
It's nostalgic. If you ever had a really bad breakup, or one that you felt bad about, I've had a couple in my life, emotional, romantic breakup I'm speaking of, and then sometimes you'll just be walking and you'll go past a place where you spent a lot of time with the beloved, or or you'll smell a smell that reminds you of the beloved that you were with, that you no longer are, and then you'll have this whole like sort of bittersweet nostalgia overwhelm you with this sort of acute rememberingness of the time together in that same place. It's sort of like that.
Yes.
You go about your life never thinking about that person, because it's done. You broke up ages ago or whatever, and then bang, something will like trigger a sort of a field of remembrance along with this bittersweet nostalgia. And this, however, contextually has no emotional component to other. It's more like as if reality itself is the beloved other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Well, I'm glad I'm not alone. I'm glad you can grok this one.
That would be cool for it to happen for a while, because I didn't want it to slip away. I'm like, what am I remembering? What's this feeling I have? And my daughters were in the kitchen with me. They're like, what's wrong? And I'm like, something's going on. I have this weird feeling, Sorry about the echo. I don't know why it just started all of a sudden. It's the trolls, maybe.
Well, it's 108. It's just passed. It's one of my lucky numbers when you were talking about this bittersweet echoing thing. Echo, because it's like an echo, because in a way, it's like an echo of something that we're experiencing, an echo of something true, maybe. Like this is not the real reality. It's an echo. It's a bad replication.
That's funny that you said the echo thing, and we were talking about synchronicities. The echo in my voice itself is sort of pointing to what we were just talking about, how like pay attention. It's like
pay attention.
Like an echo of the reality. Yeah.
So, something's trying to be told here. Some secrets trying to be told. So yeah, that's the latest. So that's about it. I think we covered it. It's like
that's awesome.
I was really keen to have people be prepared for their QHHT without sounding negative. I hope that came across as prescriptive as opposed to fear-based. I'm sure the sessions are great for everyone. Just everyone know that you're entitled to your protection field before you start. So get yours up.
That was great information. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Lori. It's always a pleasure, and I can't wait to have you back again.
Thanks, Shane. It is a lot of fun and a great pleasure. And yeah, happy birthday, Jose. I missed your party. If you're around and listen later. I was out at the grocery store when I saw he's live with Jose.
Well, lots of love and light to everybody in the chat. And if you've had similar experiences, please chime in the comments below, because I'd love to hear what you guys, because I totally felt like it was some sort of wave or shift happening or something bigger going on. But yeah, it's really strange. And I want it to happen again, even though it was sort of a bittersweet thing. It's kind of cool.
It'll happen again. It happens for longer and longer time frames.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good one. Peace.
Thanks. Thanks, Shane.
All right. Bye-bye.